Guys, good Tuesday afternoon. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I apologize for the late start, but I think the delay was warranted. Friend of the program, contributor to our community, positive contributor to our community, Jeff Camrath, sent me something that I had not seen yet. And one of the beautiful aspects of this show is you guys, the viewers and listeners, often dictate the pace and tempo of the program. And it's a crowdsourced show. So topics that are prevalent, that are water cooler topics that are being discussed are relayed to me constantly. And we try to integrate those topics into the program. And our long-form content allows us to take a really deep dive. I mean, we don't have commercials. We're not interrupted. We're not trying to fit 22 minutes of news in a 30-minute newscast in 30-second segments. So a show we had planned today is completely different now after Jeff sent us this Advocacy Toolkit, which I'm literally going to read to you on the fly and learn about on the fly. Judah Wickower, literally behind the scenes, our director, is going to take the slides, like PowerPoint slides from the Advocacy Toolkit. There are 23 of them, and we're going to show them on screen. And as a community, together, we're going to digest these slides together, live on air, on every social media platform known to mankind. So I want to offer follow-up on yesterday's show. If you didn't watch yesterday's show, it's archived on ilovecville.com. I thought it was one of the best ones we have done. It was raw, and it was emotional, and it was from a good place. It was heartfelt. And before we take this deep dive on this Advocacy Toolkit, I want to offer some perspective that I've received since yesterday's show and some of the shows from last week. No doubt, folks know where I stand from a pro-choice standpoint when it comes to our children. The autonomy should rest in the hands of parents when it comes to our kids. Some government official should not tell my wife and I what to do with our son. My wife and I should have a conversation amongst ourselves, and then the two of us determine what's the best way we are going to raise our kid. And that seems like common sense to me. I've even said I am pro-choice when it comes to masks, that parents should have that choice. And if you're parents and you want to send your kid to school in a mask, so be it. And if you're parents and you want to send your kid to school without a mask on, so be it. Interestingly, my better half, who is the sun of our family solar system, she is the foundation. We are the planets in her orbit. She is our rock. She is absolutely our rock. She's extremely cautious with our son. And marriage is compromise and respect and understanding and love and a fluid relationship and dynamic. And I understand how important health and this caution mindset is to her. And while I'm incredibly, undoubtedly, passionately, and vehemently pro-choice when it comes to parents and masks, and it's the parents' decision from my standpoint, and not some government suit telling us what to do, we would still send our son to school in a mask. And we have all year, all last fall, all January. But it should be our choice. I've, in the last week and after yesterday's show, caught undoubtedly heat, and you could even characterize it as hate from viewers and listeners. If you saw some of the messages I got, some of the DMs I got, with the show that reached over 253,000 unique IP addresses last year, even more this year. Every year it's more because our channels are growing. You'd be shocked with some of the messages and nastiness that is sent to me. But you know what? That's part of it. It's part of it. It is part of having a large viewer and listenership, and is part of speaking your mind on topics that are difficult. And thick skin is necessary, and courage is a must. And does it hurt? Yeah, it hurts. But it's part of it. And I think what makes the program real and authentic is the honesty of what I have to say. I don't sugarcoat, I'm to the point, and I try to be authentic and straightforward and honest. And just like all of us, we're human, and it stings, the hate, but it's part of it. And this topic hits even closer to home because it's our kids. And it wasn't until our son was born did I realize this kind of love where you have this little boy who can absolutely melt your heart and make you so proud and get the warm and fuzzies, and you want to just protect them and wrap them in this cloak of safety and happiness and love. And I'm terrified that some of the things that are happening in our world are impacting his development, and it's not even him that's making these decisions. It's those of us that are around him. That's why this hits so close to home, because we all as parents just want the same thing. We just want the best for our kid. And we just want the best for our children. And we're not certain what is the best for our children. And every day, whether it's the media or something we hear on social media or from our friends or our neighbors or our family or somewhere, every day, doesn't it seem like every day is something different in this freaking pandemic? It's what am I going to wake up to today about this? And the only thing us as parents, how many parents out there, do you not feel this way? Do you not wake up and say, what's next and what's going to impact our kids? What's the next vulnerability or unknown? What's the next new thing or trend that is going to keep our kid just from going in the freaking backyard or in the schoolyard or in the hallway and playing soccer or baseball or tag or hide and go seek, or having a sleepover with your buddies, or having some Lunchables or Dunkaroos in the cafeteria, or doing a sandwich trade? I'll give you half of my bologna sandwich for your fruit snacks. Remember the good old trade at lunch? Where you traded some Lunchables for a PB&J and a bag of chips. That's not happening. So we have one thing in common, and it's undoubtedly a divided community. And it's not just ours, but it's communities everywhere. It's not just ours. If there's any solace, it's not just ours. It's communities everywhere in our country, in the world. We're a divided community, and we're divided because of this pandemic that is so unknown. We've never been in this situation before, so we don't know how to respond and react. We don't know. And because we don't know, it creates this fear and uncertainty and vulnerability, and those feelings are scary. And when we feel scared, we respond in ways that we otherwise would not when we are thinking rationally. So if there's anything, any solace, any saving solace here, it's this. All of us have a common denominator in this fight against this effing thing we call COVID. And that common denominator is the love and protection we want for our kids. And the parents that are mask mandate, better have masks in our schools, they want our kids to be safe. And the parents that are pro-choice, it's the parents' decision whether kids wear masks in their schools. They want our kids to be safe and develop and have a childhood that is, quote, air quote, normal. It's the same thing. We all want what's best for our children. Jeff Camrath at about 12:28, 12:27, before a 12:30 show. Thank you, Jeff Camrath. Sent me a link that I want to share with you. And the link is urgencyofnormal.com. And I'm going to show the slides on air. Do you have those slides ready to go? Director Judah Wickhauer is class A+, scramble on the fly, A+ guy. A+ guy. Seriously. Okay, so first, this is an advocacy toolkit for parents, students, mentors, teachers, administrators, and everyone invested in taking the best possible care of our children. I have a nose for news. My first job out of the University of Virginia was as a reporter for the Daily Progress. I did print, radio, and television. When you do news for as long as I did, you develop a nose for news, and you understand what will go viral before it goes viral. This is going to go viral, not just in our community, but from Charlottesville to Los Angeles. I'm going to read you the background of the toolkit before showing you the slides, and I will identify some of the doctors that are a part of this advocacy toolkit. Here's the about. We are a group of scientists and pediatric infectious disease, emergency, and ICU doctors concerned that COVID-19 mitigation measures for children are doing more harm than good. Health must be viewed holistically, yet school policymakers have narrowly defined safety as the mere absence of COVID, putting children into a loop of mitigation measures that are uncoupled from actual risks. After 2 years of living with one disruption after another, the toll on children's mental and physical health is increasingly evident and alarming. To protect them, an urgent return to fully normal schooling is needed. We have created this advocacy toolkit to support that shift, along with guidance on how to use this toolkit. We've distilled the raw data so that parents, students, and school decision makers at all levels can understand not just COVID-19, but the harms of 2 years of pandemic life to children's health and well-being. As scientists and physicians, our goal is to provide accurate data and nuanced guidance to help People frame decisions and balance risk, not to make the decisions for you. That's the background of the toolkit. The team is 14 doctors, men and women, people of color, folks that are white. 2 of the 14 in this community we call Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Dr. Eliza Holland, a pediatrician at the University of Virginia Children's Hospital. And Dr. Jeff, is it Vergalis? I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name, Jeff. Dr. Jeff Vergalis, a pediatrician and pediatric cardiologist at the University of Virginia. 2 of the 14 are at UVA. So here's what I would like to do with today's show. And I see a significant audience here. I'd like to go over these slides one by one with you. Because this is a potential foundation for decision making for moms and dads, for teachers, administrators, school board members, and superintendents to help navigate COVID uncertainty. Otherwise, a North Star or COVID compass. Judah, if we could, and I have it on my screen, you get them up. The first slide is the cover slide. Very straightforward, if you can put that on screen. Look it on screen. And I understand thousands of you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, and you don't have the luxury of visuals. So I will read the screen while those watching on social platforms like Twitter and Facebook, etc., can look at the screen. So look at the screen, the first slide. Children, COVID, and the urgency of normal. An advocacy toolkit for parents, students, mentors, teachers, and administrators. That's the first slide. The second slide, if you can put that on screen. The second slide says this, and I will share this link. In fact, I will share this link in the comment section of my Facebook page across the I Love CVille Network, which is 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, the third largest Instagram in the community, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, and every other social platform possible. The second slide, quote, 18 months ago, it was irresponsible and wrong to say COVID is similar to the flu. It was wrong to say many people hospitalized or dying just have positive tests, are not sick from COVID. 18 months ago, it was wrong to say it's most important to protect the vulnerable. Omicron is different, the second slide says. Now, that's basically correct. COVID is adapting to us. We need to adapt. Those are comments from former CDC Director Tom Frieden. Third slide, if you could put it on screen. In fact, you can go ahead and put the third slide and rotate put the third slide on screen for about 10 seconds, and then the fourth slide on screen. The third and fourth slides are about the authors of the Advocacy Toolkit. You have virologists, you have pediatricians, internal medicine physicians. You have doctors associated with the University of California, Davis, Johns Hopkins, doctors associated with the University of California, San Francisco. You have the head of critical care at the Ottawa Hospital. You have an assistant professor of pediatrics at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. You have Dr. Jeff Vergalis, a pediatrician and pediatric cardiologist at the University of Virginia. You have doctors from Harvard University and the University of Missouri, associate professors of pediatrics at the University of California. You have doctors from the best schools and hospitals in the world who are the authors of this toolkit. Now, sir, if you could go to the fifth slide. I will read the fifth slide verbatim, word for word, for those that are listening in their vehicles or their earbuds at the gym, coffee shop, or wherever they may be. We'll welcome Richmond, Virginia audience, McLean audience, Lexington, Virginia audience, Arlington audience, Crozet, Virginia audience, all on our heat map right now. Folks outside Charlotte, North Carolina in our heat map. Folks outside Philadelphia on our heat map. I see our friends in Buckhead, in Atlanta, Georgia, watching us on the program right now. We have folks in Holland watching the program as we speak. New Mexico watching the program as we speak. I'm grateful for your viewership and your listenership. I'm getting cues from our team that 7 states and 3 countries are on our heat map now. About this toolkit. The toolkit is intended to help everyone who needs to make evidence-based decisions for pre-K and K through 12 schools and extracurricular activities. It summarizes the most important data regarding COVID and children of all ages so you can be empowered. It is intended for parents, students, mentors, teachers, administrators, and everyone invested in taking the best possible care of our children. Please share and discuss within your communities and use it to help inform and focus discussions with your school. The discussion is particularly focused toward highly vaccinated communities because that is where schools are being most impacted by COVID policy changes right now. We highly encourage vaccination. I'll stop reading from the 5th slide. Highly vaccinated communities. Albemarle County is a highly vaccinated community. The city of Charlottesville is a highly vaccinated community. The doctors behind this toolkit are pro-vaccination. Pro-vaccination, these doctors. They're encouraging the vaccination. They're asking folks to share the toolkit as I'm doing right now. I'll go back to reading slide 5, verbatim. We urge everyone to have discussions with openness and mutual respect. The job of being a teacher, school administrator, parent, or student has been exceptionally difficult these last 2 years. Understand that if you're afraid, so is the person you're talking to. Compassion and accurate information will move us forward. As scientists and physicians, our role is to inform you with accurate data, give it context you can understand, and provide guidance about confusing issues. Impacts from COVID and mental health vary among different communities, schools, families, and individual children. We humbly acknowledge this and provide these data to support every community in making their own decisions. Go back to me before we get to slide 6, if you could please, Sir Judah. We currently have, my wife sent me this, 7 Virginia school districts are suing Governor Glenn Youngkin over his executive order allowing parents to opt their children out of locally imposed school mask requirements. School boards in Fairfax County, Prince William County, Alexandria, Arlington, Richmond, Falls Church, and Hampton have filed a complaint challenging the constitutionality of the order. The school boards say the governor's executive order cannot supersede a March 2021 Commonwealth law that says local school boards should follow CDC and prevention guidelines. Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention Guidelines. Currently, the CDC recommends universal indoor masking by all students ages 2 and older, staff, teachers, and visitors to K through 12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. So, guys, we have 7 Virginia school districts suing the governor. The governor of Virginia ran on a clear platform that if he's elected governor of Virginia, he's going to yank the mask mandate. The guy was straightforward. He said, if you elect me governor of Virginia, I will remove the mandate of wearing masks in schools and return the autonomy and decision-making to parents and strip it from school districts. Dude said that clear cut. That was his whole freaking platform, and he beat McAuliffe on empowering parents when it comes to their child's curriculum and schooling. That's how he won. McAuliffe put his foot in his mouth not once, twice, but 3 times about parents shouldn't have a say over their kids' curriculum in schools. McCullough said that. Youngkin, the opposite, and said parents should have autonomy over their kids. He won. That's the platform he won upon. Now, already, the mandate was lifted yesterday. Today is 36, not even 36 hours. We're talking 30 hours after the mandate was lifted yesterday. When do kids go to school? 8 a.m., 8:05 a.m. When do they go? 8:40 a.m., some 7. The mandate was lifted yesterday. Yesterday. And 7 school districts are already suing the governor, and more, including some local. I'm hearing some local are galvanizing now to sue the governor. The dude had a clear-cut platform saying he was going to do this. It's no surprise. All right, let's go back to the slides. Let's go to slide 6? Slide 6. Is it on screen, sir? Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. For those that are listening on Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, I will read it for you. The headline says, Children COVID in Schools. The subheader, there is 5 subheadlines on slide 6. Subheadline 1, COVID poses very little threat of serious disease for students in highly vaccinated communities. 14 doctors that are at the top of their field that specialize in pediatrics. The subheadline of slide 6, I will read it again. COVID poses very little threat of serious disease for students in highly vaccinated communities. We've emphasized that Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville are highly vaccinated communities. First bullet point under subheader 1. COVID is a flu-like risk for unvaccinated children. COVID is a flu-like risk for unvaccinated children. Extraordinary measures in schools are not justified. Can it get more succinct than that? COVID is a flu-like risk for unvaccinated children. Extraordinary measures in schools are not justified. Are not. Vaccinated children have almost no risk of severe disease. Omicron does not change this. Teachers remain well protected by vaccination, with boosters important in older age groups. Next subheader. Protecting the mental, social, and emotional health of students is paramount. Children are experiencing unprecedented levels of anxiety, depression, and other mental health impacts. Child deaths from suicide vastly outnumber deaths from COVID, and child suicides are increasing. Okay, I'm going to go back to me, and we'll go back to slide 6. Are we on me? What happens if we take children, we put them in pods for 2 years, remove them from their friends, have them isolate, increase their screen time because they can't play with their friends as much, so they're undoubtedly on screens more. We take away social cues and facial expressions and emotional cues, like half your face is removed when you're wearing a cloth. Is that not true? You can't play with your friends as much. If you are playing with your friends, you're probably in a pod of a couple of friends and not your whole group. And you can't see what your friends are doing from a facial, emotional, communication, expression standpoint because it's covered. Oh, and we're going to put you in front of screens, virtual learning, for half that time that COVID's happening. And you undoubtedly are going to spend more screen time on YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Kids, YouTube Kids, Blippy, F Blimpy. I can't stand Blimpy. I can't have any more Blimpy in my life. That guy drives me bananas. No more Blimpy for me. Of course kids are going to have anxiety, depression, and other mental health impacts. Go back to slide 6 if you could, please, sir. On screen, look at the screen. Next subheader, focused protection strategies can protect the vulnerable without harming students' overall well-being. Preserving in-person learning and de-escalating fear are the best responses to Omicron. 14 doctors, top of their field, are saying this. Preserving in-person learning and de-escalating fear are the best responses to Omicron. Maintaining in-person learning is critical for protecting our students. Escalating COVID rules are harmful. Normalize the daily school experience as much as possible. To protect our children, an urgent return to fully normal school is needed. Next slide. And next slide is synonymous, or next slide depicts the, if you can go to me first before we go to slide 7. The next slide discusses long COVID. One of the hottest 2 words now with children is long COVID. Long COVID. COVID symptoms that stay with you long after you get COVID. Long COVID. Let's go to the slide. Slide 7. Long COVID is not a major risk to children. Studies consistently find that post-infection symptoms are similar in children who had COVID and children who had other non-COVID infections. I'll read that again. Long COVID is not a major risk to children. Studies consistently find that post-infection symptoms are similar in children who had COVID and children who had other non-COVID infections. And then they have citations at the bottom of the slide from where the statements are backed with research and data. Slide 8, please, sir. Slide 8. Thank you kindly. Thank you, Judah. Thank you. Slide 8's headline: COVID risk to vaccinated healthy children is extremely low. With severe disease risk from COVID already very low for healthy children, vaccines drive the risk to nearly zero. They're using data from 930,000 cases, almost 1 million cases of data, including 411,000 cases of children. In vaccinated children, there were 0 deaths and almost no hospitalizations. Slide 9, please, sir. Slide 9. Thank you, sir. Headline of slide 9. Look at the screen. It's on screen. Please look at the screen. Vaccines remain highly effective against severe disease with Omicron. With Omicron, vaccines have lost most of their effectiveness against mild disease. Expect many cases. Efficacy versus severe disease remains high, and Omicron is the word pathogenic? Yeah. Pathogenic? Thank you. Cases will be overwhelmingly mild. And I want your take on this after you read these slides too, because you undoubtedly, and anybody who watches the show, understands that Judah is a reasonable voice on this program. I'm often very passionate. This man is a reasonable voice. That's safe to say, you would say. Slide 10, if you can get it on screen. So please digest this, J-Dubs. Slide 10. This is about teachers. Teacher, staff, and family members are well protected by vaccination, with a booster dose important for older groups. In adults over age 65, a booster dose restores protection against hospitalization to pre-Omicron levels. The United Kingdom has decided not to recommend additional boosters. 3 doses does the job in the UK. Slide 11. Slide 11, please, sir. Headline of slide 11: protecting the mental, social, and emotional health of students should be our top priority. Indicators of student mental health distress are at all-time highs. Policies to improve and protect student mental health are urgently needed. Can you go back to me? I haven't even had this conversation yet. Are we back on me? I haven't even had this conversation yet with my wife because I haven't seen her since dropping off her little boy at school. On the way to school today, not even 4, almost 4, our son was talking about literally COVID, vaccines, masks, asking questions about safe, am I safe? Dude is 3. He's 3, not even 4, almost 4, and asking about COVID. Of course, if you're around it constantly, these little sponges are going to absorb it, the conversation, the topic material, and they're going to start trying to process it. A 3-year-old should not be worrying about anything. The extent of what a 3-year-old should worry about is, why are there not enough purple fruit snacks in my Welch's fruit snack pack? Why don't they give enough purples? It's always the reds. There's no purples. Why are there no grapes in the Welch's fruit snack pack? There are no purples, only reds. That should be the worry. Daddy, I got all reds this time. Purple's my favorite color. Where's the purples? I want a purple. Well, son, I don't know why there's no purples, but there's another pack we can try tomorrow at snack time, and we can see that if there's purples in there. Okay, Daddy, I love you. Not COVID and mask and being safe. Go back to slide 11, if you could please, sir. Slide 11. Protecting the mental, social, and emotional health of students should be our top priority. Depressive and anxiety symptoms doubled during the pandemic. There's a citation number behind it to back that statement. 25% of youth are experiencing depressive symptoms, and 20% of youth are experiencing anxiety symptoms. Eating disorders increased 120% among students during COVID. There were 2,400 child suicides in the U.S. in 2020. Children were the only age group to show an increase in suicides from 2019 to 2020. Emergency department visits in early 2021 for suspected suicide attempts in the United States increased by 51% in adolescent girls. Those are astronomical, incredibly impactful statistics. Next slide. That's slide 12, please, sir. There's 23 slides. The last slide is a back cover page slide that is empty. We're halfway through, more than halfway through. School closures are harmful, the slide says. The toll of school closures and social isolation on children's mental health cannot be overstated and will require immediate and long-term investigation and action to fully assess and address the impact. Come back to me if you could on screen. I closed the show yesterday in very demoralized fashion. And I was wondering aloud on this microphone in this show what I've been thinking for so long. What is the true impact this generation, Generation Alpha, is our children's generation. It's monikered and dubbed or nicknamed Generation Alpha. What is the true impact negative we have had on Generation Alpha with increased screen time, with decreased socialization with peers, with increased isolation, with decreased verbal, mouth, and facial expression interactions. What is the true impact Generation Alpha, the true impact this will have on Generation Alpha? We don't even know that answer yet. We don't know that answer yet. That is a fair question we should be asking. Slide 12 says school closures were associated with negative mental health impacts for both parents and students. Yeah. Hey, moms and dads, your kid's learning at home now through a computer in the coat closet that's now been converted into the office or the new study room. Moms and dads, you better figure out a way to keep your 9-to-5 job while your kid is virtually learning at school, virtually learning at home. Who's the onus primarily falling on? Moms. Moms. What demographic of people has been excommunicated from the workforce at a higher clip than others? Moms. Moms. Guess what, moms? COVID's forced you to do more with less. Not only are you the mom, but you're the geometry teacher, the arithmetic teacher, the ABC teacher, the history teacher. Not only are you wiping the dirty butts, the dirty diapers, not only are you helping with dinner, breakfast, and lunch, but you got to keep up on homework, and you get no break from kid anymore. What's that strain going to do to moms? How many moms out there have upticked on anxiety meds associated with COVID experiences? Next slide. Focus protection for the vulnerable. The vulnerable must not be forgotten. Even with vaccines available, some people will remain at risk of severe disease from COVID infections. Get fully vaccinated and boosted. Boosters greatly reduce the risk for the most vulnerable. During periods of high transmission, limit your exposure by quarantining and avoiding indoor spaces. Test right away if you develop respiratory symptoms. Next slide, recommendations. Maintaining in-person learning regardless of case counts. Students' overall health is best supported by keeping daycares, preschools, and schools open. De-escalate fear around getting COVID. Talk openly with your children and parents about how well the vaccines work and how safe we are. For healthy children, COVID is a flu-like risk if unvaccinated, and almost no danger if vaccinated. Change the focus to supporting students' mental, emotional, and social health. The next slide, please, sir. Health is about more than the mere absence of COVID-19. Dude, that statement resonates with me. That statement freaking resonates with me. Please go to me on a one-shot. Please let me read this headline, and please let me just verbally let you know, stream of conscious, what's going on here. The statement on the slide, it says, health is about more than the mere absence of COVID-19. That means to me the collateral damage of a lack of socialization, the collateral damage of missing friend and in-person time, the collateral damage of not playing sports in groups, the collateral damage of learning life lessons in hallways, in classrooms, in cafeterias. You're going to get bullied in life. And it's not just in schools or when you're a kid. Bullying doesn't stop when you graduate from high school. It could happen later in life. Better prepare for it, and how better to prepare for it than to experience it when you're an adolescent. Guess what? Not everybody gets a trophy. You know what pisses me off so much? The everybody gets a trophy mentality of youth sports today. That is bogus. People are not good at certain things, and that's life. Finding professional success is gravitating to skill sets that you are good at and gravitating from skill sets that you are not so good at. Everybody gets a trophy. Johnny and little Johnny and little Susie, your team was dead last in the youth soccer league. Neither you, Johnny, nor Susie contributed to the team from a meaningful minute standpoint, but you get the best trophy. You get the trophy that's the same size and weight and shininess as the MVP of the league, whose team came in first place. BS. Next slide, 16. New York Times. We learned our lesson last year, do not close schools. The 14 doctors behind this toolkit encourage you to read the New York Times article by Joseph G. Allen, a doctor. And they include a quote from the article, a few quotes. The risk of severe outcomes to kids from coronavirus infection is low, and the risk to kids from being out of school are high. We should make masking in schools voluntary rather than mandatory. Masking was a necessary inconvenience early on, and in short stints was fine. But to think that 2 years of masking has no impact on socialization, learning, and anxiety is short-sighted. Kids are resilient, but not endlessly resilient. Schools should never close. 14 doctors, top of their field, top hospitals and institutions in America, encouraging you to read an article by another doctor. His name, Dr. Joseph Allen, published in the New York Times, the world's newspaper. They are highlighting a quote from the article, and the quote verbatim reads, quote, "We should make masking in schools voluntary rather than mandatory. Masking was a necessary inconvenience early on, and in short stints was fine. But to think that 2 years of masking has no impact on socialization, learning, and anxiety is short-sighted. Kids are resilient, but not endlessly resilient." Yeah, no shit. I mean, excuse the profanity. I'm sorry. Kids are resilient, but not endlessly resilient. The next slide is on masking. Do you have slide 17 up? We have 5 slides left. Student masking is the most visible and controversial part of ongoing school COVID mitigations. The most important thing to remember is that the risk of severe disease from COVID-19 for healthy children has always been low. And in vaccinated children, COVID is much less dangerous than the flu. Vaccinated children, COVID much less dangerous than the flu. Next slide. What slide is that? 18? Well-controlled, real-world studies have not demonstrated any clear benefit of masking students. 14 doctors, top of the field. I can assure you that this toolkit, I will share it all over the I Love CVille Network. I swear to God, I will make this go viral in Central Virginia. I understand the following we have: 253,000 unique IP addresses on this network, on our Facebook pages, our LinkedIn, our Twitter, our Snapchat, our TikTok, our YouTube, our Spotify, our iTunes, our Apple Podcasts, our website. What am I missing? Our Instagram. I will put this everywhere. Well-controlled real-world studies have not demonstrated any clear benefit of masking students. To be informative, studies on school mask usage should evaluate effectiveness in real-world use, and most include a well-matched unmasked control group. Several studies meeting this criteria are available, and the results are consistent. I'm going to read it verbatim from the slide. This is not me, this is doctors. 14, 2 in this community. Top of the field. The CDC study found a 21% lower COVID, is the word, incidence. The CDC found a 21% lower COVID incidence in schools that required mask use among students, but could not be sure the benefit was real. And there's a citation with it. The evaluation by the United Kingdom's Health Security Agency and Department for Education found an 11% reduction in student COVID cases with mask usage, but also could not be sure the benefit was real. And a citation with it. The next slide about mask. I'm going to read verbatim from the slide. COVID-19 mitigation practices and COVID-19 rates in schools, a report on data from Florida, New York, and Massachusetts. Epicenters of COVID, Florida, New York, and Massachusetts. The quote right next to it, we do not find any correlations with mask mandates. The next one, reported COVID-19 incidents in Wisconsin high school athletes in fall 2020. There were no significant associations between COVID-19 incidents and face mask use. Verbatim, I'm reading this. In-school COVID transmission was the same in 4 to 5-year-olds where masking was not used, and in 6 to 7-year-olds where masking was required. Did you hear that one? That's a big one, don't you think? Yeah. In-school COVID transmission was the same in 4 to 5-year-olds where masking was not used, and in 6 to 7-year-olds where masking was required. School masking summary page, last slide, slide 22. I'm going to read the summary page verbatim. And yes, I see the incredibly positive messages coming in. And I see the incredibly nasty messages coming in right now. And I'm okay with both. I understand it. I get it. I get it. It still stings and hurts, but I get it. I get it. School summary slide. I'm going to read it verbatim, and then we'll go to a two-shot with you, J-Dubs, because I want your perspective. Please, sir. Here's the school masking summary verbatim. Student masking has no scientifically established benefit in real-world use. When an intervention's real-world benefits are too small to measure, we should feel comfortable ending its use. Potential harms from long-term masking are poorly understood, and reports on mask removal have noted social and emotional benefits for students. I'll read those again. Student masking has no scientifically established benefit in real-world use. Potential harms from long-term masking are poorly understood, and reports on mask removal have noted social and emotional benefits for students. Moving to mask optional policies and increasing school-based support and interventions for children will be crucial for student mental health. The need for normalcy at schools is urgent, but preparing for change may take time in many places. We recommend ending mandatory masking no later than February 15th. This will allow schools to communicate and prepare for anxieties to fall as the Omicron peak subsides, and for additional families to get their children fully vaccinated if they so choose. Anyone who wants or needs to continue using a mask is free to do so. Last slide of substance, slide 23, is just a QR code where you can download the toolkit. Two-shot, J-Dubs and Jerry, please, sir. Thumbs up when we're on that two-shot, please, sir. Our team, Judah, 14 doctors, two from the University of Virginia, Dr. Eliza Holland and Dr. Jeff Regalis. I believe, Jeff, I hope I'm not saying your last name incorrectly, and if so, I apologize, sir. And I believe we live in the same area. If you are so inclined, Dr. Jeff and Dr. Eliza, I would kindly, hospitably, graciously like to welcome you on the show to discuss this advocacy toolkit. I will share the link where you can find the advocacy toolkit across the I Love CVille Network. Judah, first impressions.
First impression is it's a common sense document. It sounds like they've put a lot of thought and care into the writing of it, and none of it really surprises me, frankly. But I'm sure to some people it may come as a bit of a surprise.
More impressions.
I mean, I'd have to read through it fully myself, but it just makes sense. I mean, from the very beginning, there was always information on the fact that the coronavirus, the current one, COVID-19, had little to no effect on children. And if it did, it was like a mild flu. And they're just confirming that here. So it's not, I don't find it surprising. Like I said, nothing in this is really surprising to me. I mean, it's all sounds fairly common sense to me. Forcing kids to wear masks for years is detrimental in many ways, and like they said, the what was it, the 11% or whatever it was incidence of difference in some of their studies is insignificant enough to not really make a difference in how you would choose to act based on the information.
Vanessa Parkhill in Earlysville. Love you, Vanessa Parkhill. Appreciate your support of this show. My generation, she says, is Generation X. My generation, Generation X, is sometimes considered the me generation. Little ones today are being set up to be the afraid generation, Generation Alpha. Welcome, Las Vegas, to the program.
That was one of the things that I wrote down as I was listening is, do we continue to live in fear? And are we teaching our children fear and timidity?
Yeah. This is the really crappy part about this. COVID took place during what is undoubtedly the most divisive election in American presidential history. The pandemic and the vaccine and mask wearing became political calling cards or lightning rods that were leveraged, unfortunately, as propaganda or strategy. Had COVID transpired in the early or middle part of Trump's term, or the early or middle part of Biden's term, the mitigation strategies used for this pandemic would have been incredibly less divisive. We had candidates at local, Commonwealth, and federal levels running on pandemic platforms. The country is split fairly evenly amongst Republicans and Democrats. So candidates utilize this pandemic as leverage to gain office. Biden did it, Democrat. Youngkin did it, Republican. And when candidates utilize a pandemic that the world has never seen before as a political calling card, as political leverage, it's going to piss off half the population and create enemies. Enemies that were otherwise friends and family. And that's what's happened. And stuck in the crossfire of this political calling card, this political COVID leverage, is whom?
Children.
It's children. They're like in the scope, in the proverbial scope of this political firestorm. And goodness gracious, it's time we get the kids out of this political scope and crossfire, and it's time we let kids to go back to trading bologna sandwiches for Lunchables and Snicker bars for Welch's fruit snacks and Dunkaroos for Hershey chocolate milk and traditional Doritos for Cool Ranch Doritos. Or some damn good barbecue cheddar Fritos. I don't want to live. All right, I'm going to change that, what I'm about to say. I don't want our kids to continue living in an ecosystem where the lunch tray does not exist because of fear of a pandemic that's been exploited and manipulated by the media. And that's exactly what's happened. Anything else you want to add to this, Judah Wickower?
Yeah, I think we need to take stock oftentimes and make sure that the cure is not worse than the disease.
Bravo. Well said. A+ love the contributions you're making to the show in 2022. Seriously, you make it better. I mean that. Say it again. That resonates with me.
Make sure the cure isn't worse than the disease. If the disease, in this case, it's hard to say. In 2020, we all had a lot of learning to do, and now with more knowledge on what we're dealing with, we just need to make sure that we don't harm our society, our children, not just our children. We need to make sure that how we deal with this doesn't cause worse ramifications than if we chose to let it run.
Empower moms and dads with the decision making for their children. Who knows the child better than a mom or dad? Don't allow the mitigation strategies to cause more damage than the pandemic itself. And for goodness gracious sake, allow our children to trade the peanut butter and jelly sandwich for some freaking Lunchables, or the Welch's fruit snacks for some Dunkaroos. Please. That's the show. Thank you.